time for the debate has expired. Questions without notice. Senator Murray-Smith. Order.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. Yesterday, when asked whether the Morrison government will commit to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan in full and on time, Senator Ruston said, and I quote, "There are many people who have made many comments, but that doesn't change the commitment of this government to remain absolutely focused on the delivery of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan." Given your coalition colleagues have today sought to prevent all water buybacks and block the return of the 450 litres of water to our rivers, can the minister confirm not all members of the coalition share that commitment?
Order. Before I call Senator Birmingham, on my right, I have asked repeatedly for silence during questions. There was murmuring across the chamber. I would appreciate that not occur during questions. The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, in this place I speak representing the Prime Minister, representing the government. I don't pretend to speak for every single individual and their views, but I make very clear in response to Senator Smith that the government stands resolute in its support for the implementation of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, for implementation, as we have said, in full and on time. We are proud as a government to have ensured that billions, thousands of billions of litres of additional water entitlement have been secured to support environmental flows across the Murray-Darling Basin. The securing of those thousands of billions of litres of additional water entitlement is enabling the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder to undertake a range of activities in support of environmental assets across the Murray-Darling Basin, not just in your home state and my home state of South Australia, Senator Smith, but right across the Murray-Darling Basin in the support and protection of Ramsar wetlands, of internationally significant environmental assets and of the overall sustainability of the river system. But as has always been the case in relation to the Murray-Darling Basin, it is also crucial that the Basin Plan continues to be implemented in a way that seeks to ensure we not only have a sustainable river, but we have sustainable and productive river communities who rely upon it as well. And that has been something our government has sought to work hard to achieve over the years in terms of prioritising investment in infrastructure across the river to secure those further water entitlements whilst helping those river communities to become more productive whilst returning water to the river, to maintain that production of food and fibre that is essential to river economies whilst having that healthy river system.
Senator Smith, a supplementary question.
South Australian Liberal Water Minister David Spears has said, and I quote, "I have spoken with Minister Pitt today to express my disappointment with this stunt by the National Party. The Marshall government categorically rejects the amendments put forward in the Senate. Does this minister reject the amendments from coalition senators?"
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr. President. The answer to that is yes, Senator. Yes, it is. It is the case that when those amendments come to a vote, I and the government will be voting against those amendments. That is the government position, and, Mr. President, the government does so. The government does so.
Order, Senator
clear in our position, as I said in the primary question, Senator Smith,
Order,
that we support the Murray-Darling Basin Plan.
Please resume your seat again. Senator Watt, when I call senators by name, I expect them to heed it. I was calling senators on my left who are busy interjecting, Senator Wong. I expect them to heed it for at least a period. I don't want to have to shout to get the names through the wall of noise. Senator Birmingham to continue.
Thanks, Mr. President. It was a coalition government, it was the Howard government that passed the Water Act in 2007. I am pleased that throughout my time in this place, indeed, around the time of the passage of the Water Act, it was one of the first bills that I contributed to in this building, that we have maintained a bipartisan position in relation to support for the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. It's my intention that that is preserved and that is continued, and that is why the government will continue to support the Basin Plan.
Senator Smith, a final supplementary question.
Given the Nationals' demonstrated disdain for the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, will the Prime Minister ensure the Nationals do not retain the water portfolio or control of the Morrison government's water policy?
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, Mr President, it's not for me to speculate in relation to ministerial arrangements, but I make clear, as I have, that the government's position in terms of support for the implementation of arrangements under the Water Act, including the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, remains. The government is determined to continue to support basin communities in the way in which that plan is implemented, and to be mindful of the fact that there have been and are genuine concerns from people whose livelihoods and communities depend upon the basin, and that we ought to be sympathetic and mindful of those concerns whilst ensuring implementation of a plan that guarantees all communities that rely upon the river system have a healthy and sustainable river system to support them, to support their communities, to support the productive growth of food and fibre that our economies depend upon, particularly across those river communities, but to support also the healthy, sustainable system into the future.
Senator Small.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Senator Seselja. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the Morrison government's technology not taxes approach to emissions reduction is helping Australia not only meet but exceed our international obligations while standing up for Australia and supporting our economy without costing Australian jobs, costing the Australian industry and threatening Australia's energy security?
The Minister representing the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Senator Seselja.
Thank you very much, Senator Small. And yes, I can. The Morrison government is taking practical action to reduce emissions through technology, not taxes, and our plan is working. I know Labor and the Greens don't like to hear these facts, but emissions are now at the lowest levels since records began in 1990, more than 20% below 2005 levels, and we are reducing them at about double the rate of the average across the OECD, and will absolutely meet and beat our 2030 Paris target. And to keep this momentum going, we will invest $20 billion in new energy technologies by 2030, unlocking some $80 billion of public and private investment over the decade. Now, our technology investment roadmap is about supporting a portfolio of technologies, so we can reduce emissions across every sector of the economy, so we can create at least 160,000 jobs by 2030, so we can deliver the cheap and reliable energy Australians deserve, and so we can keep the lights on without sending jobs offshore, and so we can secure Australia's future. But just last night in this place, we saw firsthand the very real danger that those opposite, Labor and the Greens, if they were ever back on the government benches, would provide. They voted against $192 million of investment in lower emissions technology, significant reforms that would have seen even lower emissions and created thousands of new jobs. Even the member for Hunter described Labor's decision last night as ideological craziness. In fact, he has said that sadly the hard left, the excessive progressives, as I call them, are just on an ideological bent. Now, Senator McAllister, we know you fit very much in that camp. The excessive progressives are in charge. It's all about dogma and ideology rather than the policies that work, bringing down emissions, growing jobs and securing our future.
Order. Order. Senator Small, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline why this technology not taxes approach is important to supporting jobs in my home state of Western Australia, but is particularly important in reducing emissions in intensive industries like manufacturing, agriculture, transport and resources?
Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you. And Senator Small is right. These sectors keep the Western Australian economy moving, and critical to supporting jobs in these sectors is supporting the technology that allows them to offset or abate their emissions. Now, our changes to ARENA's mandate would have provided $192.5 million in new funding to back technologies like healthy soils, carbon capture and storage, and reduced emissions for aluminium and steel, energy efficiency and clean hydrogen. Now, 1 in 10 West Australian jobs are in the mining industry, so this makes the development of carbon capture and storage technology vital for WA. Yet those opposite voted against it. Now, I know that Each-Way Albo is heading to WA. He is heading to WA next week to hold a shadow cabinet meeting. This will be the test for him. Will he be honest with the people of WA and the Pilbara and outline his plan to tax his way to net zero emissions and the impacts of that on the WA and Australian economies?
Senator Small, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. And in light of the minister's answer about how effective our technology not taxes approach has been, is the minister aware of any risks to our economy and Australian jobs whilst we set about lowering emissions?
Order. Senator Seselja.
Well, thank you. Well, we saw last night, didn't we, some of those risks. All those Labor senators voting with their Greens coalition partners to block a technology-led approach to reducing emissions.
Senator Watt.
They voted against their own policy platform.
Senator Thorpe.
They voted to rip $192 million of new funding for ARENA programs that would create 1,400 jobs. When it comes to reducing emissions, if it's not technology, it has to be taxes, and they've shown which side they're on. You know, they've stolen Jeremy Corbyn's slogan and they've stolen some of his high taxing policies. So taxes are in Labor's DNA. They are absolutely reckless. They've abandoned the 2.2 million Australians working in energy-intensive industries. They've sent a clear message to Western Australian families and families around Australia. Labor will always put politics above people and ideology over jobs.
Order. Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck. I refer to an article in the Australian Financial Review entitled "Just 30% of aged care staff vaccinated against COVID-19." The article goes on to state that this refers to at least a single dose. More than 4 months after the vaccine rollout started, how many aged care workers have been fully vaccinated with both shots against COVID-19?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. The article in the Financial Review is a little out of date, Mr President. There are 33%, or 85,272 residential aged care staff who have received a first dose of a vaccination. According to the latest data that I have, Mr President, and of those 85,272, 40,354, or 15.6%, have received a second dose of their vaccination, Mr President. So, Mr President, we continue to work cooperatively with the states and territories on the rollout of the vaccine, as I've explained to the chamber before, and as the opposition aren't honest enough to acknowledge. We've had to reset the rollout of the vaccine to aged care workers on a couple of occasions based on health advice. Yes, it was our initial intention, Mr President, to vaccinate aged care workers alongside aged care residents, but we received health advice that that was not safe to do so. So we didn't. We heeded that health advice, Mr President. We then received advice, Mr President, that with respect to the AstraZeneca vaccine, and we made some changes to the way the rollout was occurring in that context, Mr President. So we've opened up a number of channels to provide access for aged care workforce to receive a vaccination. They can go to their GP, Mr President. They can go to a Commonwealth vaccination clinic. They can be supported through their provider, and quite a number of providers are actually providing their own vaccination services in-house as a part of a request for tender that remains open for aged care providers to operate, Mr President. They can go to a state vaccination clinic and have priority for that vaccination process. So we continue to work cooperatively to ensure aged care workers have access to vaccines.
Expired. Senator Walsh, a supplementary question.
More than 4 months after the vaccine rollout started, how many home care workers have been fully vaccinated with both shots against COVID-19?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. At this point in time, Mr President, based on the data that I have, 18.3% of home care workers have received a vaccine, and of that 18%, 4.3% of them have had a second dose, Mr President. These are very early numbers because those numbers are being reported to us at this point in time voluntarily. by home care providers. That process will be made compulsory in coming weeks, Mr President. So we continue to provide access to all of those who are providing support to senior Australians through the various processes that I mentioned to you in my answer to the previous question.
Senator Walsh, a final supplementary question.
Government's own Aged Care Workforce Task Force recommended in 2018 that a national registration system be implemented to track aged care staff working across multiple facilities. Can the minister confirm that this has still not been implemented, despite around 70% of aged care workers remaining completely unprotected against COVID-19, and last year's COVID-19 outbreak in Victoria being sparked by aged care workers working across multiple facilities?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. And as a part of our response to the Royal Commission report on aged care quality and safety, the government has announced a workforce registration program across all of the aged care system as a part of the reforms that we announced in the budget, Mr President. So we have acknowledged that that's required, and we are working to ensure that that actually is the case. It is an important thing for us to understand, Mr President.
Order. Senator Colbeck. I have Senator Wong on a point of order.
Yes, point of order, direct relevance. We didn't ask about the announcement, we asked about the implementation.
You've reminded the minister of that part of the question. There was other parts after it, but it did all refer to that particular program. I don't believe I can rule a minister not being directly relevant when he's talking about the actual program. That goes to the content of the answer, which can be debated after question time. Senator Colbeck, to continue.
Thank you, Mr President. We've conducted a number of processes and consultations with the aged care sector to ensure that we have a system in place that is effective and has the attributes that we want. Mr President, the Royal Commission made a recommendation with respect to a certain form of registration process. We didn't accept that recommendation. We're going to utilise a system that currently exists so that we can get it up and operational as quickly as possible.
Senator Colbeck. Senator Davey.
Very much, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Payne. Can the minister please outline what the Liberal and Nationals in government are doing to support more women into leadership positions and further close the gender pay gap that Labor is always worried about, including through initiatives in the Women's Budget Statement?
Order. Order. I will call the minister when there's silence. The Minister for Women, Senator Payne.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Davey for her question. The improvement of women's economic security and supporting more women into leadership positions is a key priority for the Morrison government. The 2021-22 Women's Budget Statement includes a $38.3 million expansion, for example, of the successful Women's Leadership and Development Program. It's funding innovative projects across Australia that support women into leadership roles, including, as I know Senator Davey recognises the importance of, in regional Australia. Mr President, in the Morrison-Joyce cabinet, 7 women hold cabinet positions, the highest number ever, Mr President, including 3 of my colleagues here in the Senate sitting with me today. 4 additional positions in the ministry or the assistant ministry are also held by women. Those cabinet and ministry members are all members of the Cabinet Task Force on Women's Safety and Economic Security. We're also supporting women's leadership in the public sector, including with a 50% target for women on Australian government board positions, and we are on track to meet those commitments. Our Women's Budget Statement also includes a $17 million investment to support world-class sporting events and development programs for women and girls in both football and basketball. We know that sport can be greatly beneficial to women's leadership, for players, for administrators, for coaches and for volunteers. We warmly welcome the FIFA Women's World Cup coming to Australia and New Zealand in 2023, Netball World Cup. Across Australia, I note, importantly, that the gender pay gap is at a record low level of 13.4%, and we are committed to driving that even lower, Mr President. I particularly want to welcome the leadership of the Director of the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, Mary Wooldridge. She will play a key role in that work in the coming months and years, and she is highly regarded for her contribution in this area.
Order. Senator Payne, time for the answer has expired. Order on my left. Senator Davey, a supplementary question.
Thank you. Can the minister outline the support that is provided through the Women's Leadership and Development Program that you just mentioned?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President. Across Australia, over 60 organisations will receive support under the Women's Leadership and Development Program to deliver projects that improve women's leadership and development across 5 key areas: job creation, economic security, workforce participation, leadership and safety. The program funds projects including Women Building Australia, run by the Master Builders Australia to support more women into building and construction. Then there's Titters in Business in Mango Hill in the Moreton Bay region, which supports Aboriginal women in urban, regional, rural and remote locations in starting their own businesses. The Tasmanian-based Brave Foundation, which builds support and acceptance around expecting and parenting teens as they seek employment. Mr President, I reviewed the electorates across Australia in which the WLDP program is supporting organisations like those I've already mentioned. Doesn't matter whether it's Bendigo or Durack, whether it's Grey or Lingiari, right across Australia we're supporting women's leadership.
Senator Davey, a final supplementary question.
Thank you. Can the minister please explain what our government is doing to promote women leaders through Australian government board positions and other key appointments?
Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr President, because Senator Davey's question is a very important and timely one. We know that gender diversity on boards, for example, contributes to more effective and innovative decision-making and outcomes. In December of 2020, women held a record 49.5% of Australian government board positions. We have strategies in place to meet the target of 50%, and I'm personally committed to continuing to increase gender diversity and to reach that target. As a coalition government, we've appointed a number of women to senior leadership positions, including the outgoing secretary of my own department, Frances Adamson. Secretary Adamson has done an exceptional job as the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I want to acknowledge her leadership, her own commitment to diversity, what she has brought to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the change that she has overseen in the department over the 36 years of her role in DFAT is exceptional. I attended her speech at the National Press Club today with Senator Birmingham, Senator Seselja and Senator Wong to acknowledge that leadership.
Order. Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Leader of the Government in the Senate, Senator Birmingham. While the Liberal and National parties are squabbling over net zero by 2050, global leaders are focused on the main game of reducing pollution by 2030. This is the critical decade. If the Nationals agree to the Prime Minister's preference for net zero by 2050, won't that just confirm that delay is the new denial?
The Leader of the Government, Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, I am slightly flabbergasted by that question that seems to insinuate that the Greens, who I thought argued very strongly and passionately for commitments to net zero by 2050, now seem to be deviating from that position, now seem to be saying they have an alternate position. Now, indeed, the Prime Minister has said he wants to see net zero achieved as soon as is possible. So in that sense, Senator Waters, if you're saying would before 2050 be preferable, well, indeed, if it's possible to be achieved in a world in which we get that delivered through the type of technology, not taxes approach that our government is outlining, through the type of cooperation around the world that we are seeking to strive and achieve in relation to investment in those technologies that are necessary to reduce emissions. But in terms of the short term, Australia can hold its head high as being a nation who hasn't just made commitments in relation to emissions reductions, but has met those commitments and exceeded those commitments. And often we have done so, in terms of meeting and exceeding those commitments, in a way far clearer, far stronger than some of those countries that the Greens or others cite. Australia is a country that beat its Kyoto-era targets by 459 million tonnes. our emissions are down by over 20% in the period from 2005 to the end of last year. 20% down for Australia's emissions, and that compares with 6.6% across the OECD average. That's a track record that shows Australia has been making change, and we've been able to do it and achieve it as a country whilst still growing our economy through seeing growth and investment in technologies. That's precisely what our government is committed to continuing to pursue.
Senator Waters, a supplementary question.
Thanks, President. The Coalition repealed the price on pollution before it was set to link to the European Union. Had you not done so, Australian farmers today could be earning $80 a tonne by storing carbon in the land. The Coalition has already lost Australian farmers $1.4 billion of new export income and will cost another $11 billion before the end of the decade. Why are you and your coalition partners acting against the interests and profits of Australian farmers?
I remind senators again that I need silence during questions, and there were interjections from both sides of the chamber during Senator Waters' question then. Senator Birmingham.
Well, thanks, Mr President. Well, indeed, this side of politics well and truly stands up for Australian farmers. We have made sure that we invest in the type of soil carbon capture in soil technologies that can help Australian farmers, can help to achieve reduction in emissions, but in achieving that reduction in emissions, do it in a way without applying taxes that could hit Australian farmers, Australian businesses, Australian industry and Australian households. What's obvious in Senator Waters' question just then is that the Australian Greens want to see a tax come back. The Australian Greens want to see a tax come back, and what was obvious from the voting record of the Greens last night is that they oppose investment in soil carbon. Apparently they oppose investment in hydrogen technologies as well. Mr President, I find this astounding that the Australian Greens, having come into this chamber yesterday, along with the Labor Party, to vote against more investment in hydrogen technology, more investment in soil carbon, now come in here and are asking instead for us to go to a tax route.
The answer has expired. Senator Waters, a final supplementary question.
Thanks, President. With Japan, our biggest customer of coal and gas, lifting their 2030 ambition to 46%, and South Korea, our third biggest customer, lifting theirs to 40% yesterday, are you really going to give the climate-denying National Party the trade portfolio?
Senator Birmingham.
Well, Mr President, Australia's 2030 targets will see our emissions per unit of GDP fall by some 70%. Achieving our 2030 target will see emissions per capita fall by almost 50%. That's the type of scale of activity that Australia is committed to and is taking, and based on our track record, will meet and exceed yet again. But under a coalition government, we'll meet and exceed it by investing in technology that helps farmers, like soil carbon, by investing in technology that helps energy regions of Australia, those whose jobs depend upon energy sectors, through investment in areas like hydrogen. And the actions taken by those opposite last night, so roundly criticised by Mr Fitzgibbon, as Senator Seselja outlined before, the actions taken by those opposite don't help to get regions to transform to a hydrogen economy. They don't help farmers to transform in terms of use of soil carbon. All you've done is stand as a roadblock to the type of action you say should be occurring, and you should all be ashamed of the vote you cast.
Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Resources, Water and Northern Australia, Senator Ruston. The Beetaloo Basin has potentially enough gas to supply Australia's needs for decades, offering the chance to grow a vibrant manufacturing industry in Northern Australia, while lowering carbon emissions. Can the minister inform the Senate what the Liberal Nationals government is doing to unlock the Beetaloo Basin's gas reserves to support our economic recovery while lowering emissions?
The Minister representing the Minister for Resources, Water and Northern Australia, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And can I thank Senator McGrath, but particularly for his interest in the benefits that can be generated for Northern Australia by the extraction of the amazing resources that exist in the northern part of our country. And like that, one of the very, very important projects is the development, the gas development in the $224 million Beetaloo Strategic Plan. The plan will help to deliver on Australia's long-term gas supply and dramatically improve our energy security. The Beetaloo Sub-basin is one of the largest undeveloped resources of onshore gas anywhere in the world. It's estimated that there's over 200,000 petajoules of shale gas in the sub-basin. And if you want to put that into some sort of context, that would amount to only 15% of that amount would actually supply Eastern Australia, their entire market, for in excess of 15 years. So the sub-basin holds extraordinary potential for Australia because of the quantities of oil it has in reserve. And under this particular program, we will be able to accelerate a number of projects and to deliver approximately 10 exploration wells in the sub-basin in the next 12 months. The plan will bring, in addition, $150 million of additional private investment. This plan is a plan to support Northern Australia, and it also enables us to deliver things like strategic road corridors, which will not only support 400 jobs but also support the northern part of Australia. But we're also making sure that we deliver benefits for Indigenous owners and making sure that there are Indigenous jobs, Indigenous business and Indigenous opportunities. Gas is essential for our manufacturing sector, just as it is essential for our homes and to fire up our barbecues and for lowering emissions, and that's exactly what the Beetaloo Basin can do for our nation.
Senator McGrath, a supplementary question. Order at the rear of the chamber. Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator Rice. Senator McGrath.
Can the minister outline more broadly how the development of gas is not only essential to supporting exports and domestic manufacturing, but also lowering emissions?
Order. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, Australia's resource and energy sectors not only are leading when it comes to developing new technologies, but we are also leaders in making sure that we adopt cleaner production processes. So this includes Australia's gas industry, which is well placed also to meet the demand, the growing demand in our Asia-Pacific region. So the government is absolutely committed to supporting innovative producers by embracing technologies such as carbon capture, use and storage to deliver on our emissions reduction targets, which we are absolutely committed to. And we will continue not only to have a responsible approach but a pragmatic approach. We are absolutely committed to technology and innovation being the backbone of the delivery of our energy future, and we are not going to tax the Australian economy out of existence on some ideological pretext. This government is absolutely committed to investing in things such as the carbon capture, use and storage
Senator
projects.
Ruston, time for the answer has expired. Senator McGrath, a final supplementary question.
Can the minister advise the Senate on how a technology not taxes approach, including adopting nuclear technology as mentioned in the government's technology investment roadmap, could assist in lowering Australia's carbon emissions while growing our economy?
Order. Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, our technology investment roadmap is absolutely designed to make sure that technology is the absolute core of everything we do going forward. So making sure that we watch for technologies, international developments, to make sure that Australian households, Australian businesses, all Australians are able to exercise the choice so that they can avail themselves of latest technologies where it makes sense to do so. And it's only sensible to evaluate and deploy any technology that can bring down emissions but at the same time deliver affordable, reliable and dispatchable energy for all Australians. This is because, as I said, we are committed to a technology delivery into the future. We are not going to tax our way to a clean energy future. We are going to innovate our way there. And that is why we oppose those opposite in their attempts to try and destroy our technology-facilitated energy future.
Order. Senator Patrick.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Attorney-General and concerns the government's failure to deliver on its 2019 election promise to legislate a National Integrity Commission. What is the Attorney's response to the open letter to the government from 59 eminent Australian jurists, including Mary Calderon QC, former Justice of the High Court, Tony Fitzgerald QC, former Federal Court Judge and head of the Fitzgerald Inquiry, no less than 13 former State Supreme Court Court and Appeal Court Justices, and others including Nicholas Cowdery QC, former New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions, and Jeffrey Watson SC, former counsel assisting in the New South Wales ICAC, saying, and I quote, "Enough is enough. The establishment of a National Integrity Commission with teeth is long overdue. The government has kept the Australian public waiting for 922 days and has found time to tackle a great number of the government's self-described priorities outside the coronavirus response, but has yet to find time for this one."
Order, Senator Patrick. Order. I'll call the minister when there's silence. The Attorney-General, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Patrick for your question. And, Mr President, in the first instance, what I would say to Senator Patrick is that I disagree with the premise of your question. The Morrison government is delivering on our commitment to establish a Commonwealth Integrity Commission. Mr President, the government has already put in place the funding required for when the Commonwealth Integrity Commission legislation is passed. Senator Patrick, you would be aware that in the 2019-20 budget, the government committed $106.7 million of new money to the Commonwealth Integrity Commission. This was in addition to the $40.7 million in funding for the Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity, which will transfer to the Commission, and that is a total of $147.4 million. The government has already implemented Phase 1 of the Commonwealth Integrity Commission by expanding the jurisdiction of the Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity to cover 4 additional agencies, those agencies being the Australian Taxation Office, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority and the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. You may also be aware that in the interim, the government has also allocated $54.4 million to support the expanded jurisdiction, which means that the Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity staffing levels will increase from 64 to 110 ASL in the 2021-2022 financial year to support its expanded work. The Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity, including resources and staffing, will be subsumed by the Commonwealth Integrity Commission once it commences.
Senator Patrick, a supplementary question.
Madam Attorney, there are just 7 sitting weeks of the Senate's remaining this year. That's 28 sitting days. That's probably only 9 gag motions from Senator Birmingham. Will the Attorney-General commit to introduce the government's Integrity Commission Bill on the first day of sitting on 3 August for this important matter such that it can be subject to debate?
Senator Cash.
Well, thank you, Mr President. And Senator Patrick, a nationwide consultation process on the legislation to establish the Commission has recently been completed. There were approximately 333 written submissions received and 46 consultations, meetings and roundtables that occurred during the consultation period. The government will carefully consider the feedback received through this extensive consultation process to inform further refinement of the draft legislation before it is introduced into the parliament. But I would note that it is important, not only due to the scale of the reform, but so that Australians can have confidence that the Commission will operate effectively. The purpose of the body, Senator Patrick, is extremely serious, and as such the government does need to consider the feedback that has been provided to it through the consultation process.
Senator Patrick, a final supplementary question.
Ernie, isn't it the case that the government has delayed a federal ICAC for so long to ensure that the Commission will not be operational before the next federal election? Hasn't that been the government's plan all along?
Order. Senator Cash.
Well, thank you. And no, Senator Patrick, I completely reject what you've stated in your question. I've already taken you through how the Morrison government is already delivering on its commitment to establish a Commonwealth Integrity Commission. I have advised you that a nationwide consultation process has just finalised. It had received over 333 written submissions. There were 46 consultations, meetings and roundtables that occurred during the consultation period. I think you would agree, Senator Patrick, that this significant legislation is a piece of legislation that we have to get right. It is important not only due to the scale of the reform, but so that Australians can have confidence that the Commission will operate effectively. And as I've said to you, the government will consider carefully the feedback received through this extensive consultation process to inform further refinement of the draft legislation before it's introduced into the parliament.
Senator Gallagher.
To the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck. On Monday, the Minister promised to provide the Senate with the government's document outlining how many vaccine doses will be provided across Australia month by month until the end of 2021, saying, and I quote, "I am happy to provide that information to the chamber. I will come back to the chamber as soon as possible with that information." Why has the Minister failed to provide the document to the Senate in line with his commitment and in direct contravention of yesterday's OPD, unanimously supported by the Senate, including by the government?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. It's actually not correct to say that I've refused to provide the data, Mr President, because my letter to the Senate yesterday says the final data will be released once finalised by the Coordinator-General over coming days. So, Mr President, there is a commitment from me and from the government to release the data. This data is the state's data. It's being managed. It is well, Mr President. As I said in my letter yesterday, the Coordinator-General of the vaccine rollout, Lieutenant General JJ Fruin, is currently consulting with states and territories on the vaccine horizon information, including each jurisdiction's breakdown of allocated vaccines across horizon allocation periods to the end of 2021, Mr President. And, Mr President, my advice is that that information has been published now on the Inspector General's website, and I'll provide it to the chamber at the end of question time.
Senator Gallagher, a supplementary question.
Lieutenant General Fruin told the COVID-19 Select Committee on Monday, with respect to the vaccine information, I quote, "I've also provided these documents directly to the states and territories. Given the Commonwealth provided its document to First Ministers, why has the Minister claimed in his inadequate response to the Senate's OPD, quote, will be released once finalised, when the document requested by the Senate has already been handed over to the states?"
Senator Colbeck.
Mr President, the evidence given to the committee on Monday night talked about the consultation with the states with respect to the release of the data. My letter to the Senate indicates that that process is being undertaken, has been undertaken. The data is now available.
Senator Gallagher, a final supplementary question.
The Morrison government has broken its promise that all Australians would be fully vaccinated by October, 4 million would be vaccinated by the end of March, all of 1A would be vaccinated by Easter, and 6 million Australians would be vaccinated by the 10th of May. Is the government trying to keep this information secret, and will the government commit to the same information that was provided to National Cabinet on Monday being made publicly available through the Senate?
Senator Gallagher. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. As I've indicated to the Senate, the data is now available. I will bring the documentation to the chamber, presented at the end of question time, Mr President. The information is information that's been consulted on with the states to provide an indication of the vaccine availability out to the end of 2021. It is important information for the Australian people to understand, Mr President, and had Mr President Senator Gallagher listened to my previous answers, she would have understood that the information is now available.
Senator McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck, how is the Morrison government ensuring more older Australians receive the support they need in aged care?
Order. Order. I'll call the minister when there's silence. The Minister for Senior Australians and Aged Care Services, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank Senator McLaughlin for his question. Mr President, the Australian government is investing $272 million to support senior Australians to access the aged care services that they need. We will deliver an investment in all Services Australia centres around the country to provide general information in person, face-to-face, about aged care services available to them and assist people to use My Aged Care online channels from October 31. The new face-to-face aged care specialists will be available in 70 Service Australia centres in all states and territories and include mobile service centres to reach rural and regional areas. This service will help people with the end-to-end process of accessing aged care services, including financial information support. We will also be linking up Services Australia and My Aged Care call centres so callers can easily be transferred between the two services. These simple but important measures are designed to make it easier for senior Australians to access the information they need to be in control and make their own choices as they age, Mr President. We are investing $93 million to introduce a network of up to 500 local community care finders to improve engagement with vulnerable senior Australians, including people who are homeless. There will be $65 million to provide greater access to translating and interpreting services for culturally and linguistically diverse Australians. We have allocated $7 million to assist advocacy organisations provide better service, and this government, Mr President, remains committed to providing senior Australians with the care they need and deserve as they grow older.
Senator McLaughlin, a supplementary question.
Can the minister advise what other measures the government is implementing to support independent advocacy and greater choice for senior Australians?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. The Morrison government's investment in aged care includes $94 million for expanded independent advocacy. This funding will more than double the aged care advocacy workforce to more than 150 advocates nationally, delivering around 15,000 more information and advocacy cases each year. This will improve access to face-to-face and virtual aged care advocacy for senior Australians in outer metropolitan, rural, regional and remote areas of Australia, as well as for home care recipients and culturally and linguistically diverse Australians. This investment will add also more than 1,000 local network and education sessions to build the capacity of older people, their families and representatives to exercise greater choice and control.
Senator McLaughlin, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the minister outline the government's commitment to older Australians with our $17.7 billion record investment in aged care?
Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. The Australian government is delivering a once-in-a-generation change through our aged care reform package, the largest ever investment in aged care and the largest ever response to a Royal Commission. The government listened to the experiences of Australians who gave evidence to the Royal Commission and is taking decisive action to implement the recommendations with reforms to deliver vital services, improve quality care and viability in aged care, Mr President. New home care packages have increased from 60,308 under Labor in 2012-13 to grow to more than 275,000 in 24-25, an increase of 357%. Residential aged care funding is $15 billion, up from $9.2 billion in 2013. Mr President, every year under a coalition government, home care packages are up, residential care places are up, and aged care funding is up.
Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education and Youth, Senator Reynolds. I refer to reports that in yesterday's joint party room, chaired by newly re-elevated Deputy Prime Minister Joyce, that Coalition Senators Canavan and Rennick and MPs Mr Christensen and Mr Young spoke in opposition to the government's own childcare policy. With Senator Canavan making clear he would vote against this legislation. How many Coalition members oppose the government's childcare policy?
The Minister representing the Minister for Education and Youth, Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I sincerely thank Senator Urquhart for that question. Allow me the opportunity to talk about our policy on childcare, because of course I am never, and I would never comment about deliberations
Senator
within
Reynolds,
the party
please.
room.
Senator Wong on a point of order.
Point of order, direct relevance. The minister's refusal to be directly relevant is apparent in that first response. Thank you. Well,
order.
Would you like her to speak,
order.
or do you want to
Senator
give?
Seselja, please.
Thank you, Senator Seselja.
Senator Wong, please. Your point of order.
The question went to. Oh, would you like to finish? And yeah, you
order.
go right ahead.
Senator,
go right
if we
ahead.
could stop. Interjections, order. Interjections don't need to be made, and interjections don't need to be responded to. Order on my left and my right. Senator Seselja, please. Senator Seselja, Senator Wong, points of order are to raise points of order. Interjections should not be made. They should not be responded to. Senator Wong.
Direct relevance. The question went to how many coalition members oppose the government's childcare policy.
Senator Birmingham on the point of order.
Mr President, on the point of order, and you can tell there's a camera in the chamber today. Mr President, this question from Senator Urquhart clearly went to matters that included the content of the government's childcare policy, and Senator Reynolds is entirely within orders to be responding in ways that address the content and the approach of those policies that Senator Urquhart was asking about.
Okay, so if I could rule on the point of order. Senator Wong, you reminded the minister of the conclusion of the question. The earlier part of the question asked the minister about reports regarding a party room discussion that, in my view, did go to the content of policy. I'm not in a position to ever rule whether a minister is being directly relevant in 8 seconds, in my view. So I'll call the minister to continue. But to be directly relevant, in my view, the minister can go to the content of policy that may or may not, or was reported to have been discussed in a coalition party room meeting, or to the second part of the question which you mentioned. It was quite broad in that sense. Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. And as I say, I will certainly not be talking about the confidential deliberations of our party room, but I'm delighted to talk about the outcomes of that party room and the legislation that we bring into this chamber. So let me share with you some of the things we've been doing since in government. We're spending 77% more than Labor did in government on childcare, a record $10.3 billion this year, including $9 billion to subsidise the fees set by childcare services. And today, over 280,000 Australian children are in childcare today. And wonderfully, women's workforce participation has reached a record high of 61.8% in March of this year, up from 58.7%. We overhauled the childcare system in 2018 to introduce one subsidy. The hourly fee cap we introduced is working to keep downward pressure on fees, with 87.5% of services charging under that hourly cap rate in centre-based daycare. But we know on this side of the chamber what really matters to parents, and that is their out-of-pocket costs.
Order.
We have kept our out-of-pocket costs low.
Order on my left. I'm having trouble hearing the minister.
$1 an hour cheaper on average than before we introduced the package in 2018, down from $4.87 to $3.93 per hour.
Order.
And in this budget, we are providing an additional $1.7 billion to further help Australian families with more than one child, 5 and under, in those years where we know
Order.
they are the
Senator
toughest
Reynolds,
for
time
working
for the
families
answers.
to
Answer
look
has
after their children.
expired. Senator Urquhart, a supplementary question.
It is reported that one male MP angered some female members by suggesting working women who use childcare were outsourcing parenting. How many male coalition members think women are outsourcing parenting?
Order. Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Urquhart for another opportunity to talk about the wonderful record this government has and how we understand the aspirations and the desire for Australian
Senator Reynolds. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Mr President, direct relevance. I mean, the minister's clumsiness is demonstrating what she's doing. She's saying, I'm going to ignore that question. It gives me an opportunity to talk about our policy. No,
I make the point again that unlike the other place, I don't call ministers to order from the chair myself. I wait for a point of order to be raised. This question was about reports about a claimed statement, and then asked, if I can read my own handwriting, how many, I believe, male members of the coalition supported that statement. It was the use of a reported phrase that is pejorative in nature. I'm going to give the minister some latitude. However, I will say I do not think this is as broad as the previous question, and allow the opportunity to provide an explanation of policy that was reported to be presented to the party room. So I call the minister to continue.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And again, I reiterate my thanks to Senator Urquhart for this question, something which is at the heart of passion of both parties in the coalition. And again, as we saw demonstrated in the party room yesterday, we did have a robust debate on an important policy issue to Australian families, and that is what Australians expect, and that is what marks the difference between this side and that side of the chamber. Now, let me tell you what we did discuss in relation to the legislation that is coming before the parliament. This is to provide an additional $1.7 billion to further help Australian families with more than one child, 5 and under, in the years that are the toughest for parents, for both parents to stay in the workforce. So what we did discuss is by increasing the subsidy for families with a second or third
Senator
child,
Reynolds,
5 and
time
under.
for the answer has expired. Senator Urquhart, a final supplementary question.
It's reported that Senator Hughes responded to the revolt by saying that, and I quote, "Thank you, boys, for telling us how to best raise our children. Not all of us want to sit at home with our 3-month-old watching Bluey." Why are coalition members criticising women who work and trying to tell women how to raise their children?
Order. Order. Senator Reynolds. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And can I say, I think we all love Bluey on this side of the chamber, a great Aussie classic.
Order.
Again, I congratulate Senator Hughes and everybody else who participates in the debate on this side, because we discuss the issues that count to Australian families.
Order.
And as I started to say,
Order.
by increasing the subsidy for families, 250,000 Australian families will be better off, on average by $2,260 per year. And that is exactly what we discussed in the party room yesterday. We also discussed the issue where, under this plan, a family on $110,000 with 2 children in full-time care will be $120 better off per week. And that, Mr President, is what this side of politics is all about. It is providing choice and control of Australian families and for women to stay connected with the workforce.
Order on my left. Order. On my left. Order. Senator Rennick.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. And can I add, I did stay home and raise my children for 4 years, and they were the happiest days of my life as a stay-at-home parent. Okay, my question.
Order.
My question is for the minister representing the Minister for Employment, Workforce, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash. Can the minister update the Senate on how the Morrison's government economic plan is delivering new jobs across Australia?
The minister representing the Minister for Employment, Workforce, Skills, Small and Family Business, Senator Cash.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Rennick for what is a fantastic question to take us home on this Wednesday at question time. And in the first instance, can I actually acknowledge Mayor David Good from the city of Gosnells in our home state of Western Australia for the Western Australian Senators. He is someone self-employed his entire life and someone who absolutely believes in the value of good economic policy. So great to see you here today, Mayor David Good. And Mr President, the Morrison government's economic policies, they are seeing our economy rebound from what was a devastating 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, just last month in May, what we saw, because of the economic policies that we're putting in place, was the unemployment level in Australia fall now to 5.1%. And again, that exceeded all market expectations. Mr President, this doesn't happen by accident. This happens because the businesses out there, the small businesses, the medium businesses, the large businesses, they are able to lever off the policies that the Morrison government puts in place to prosper, to grow and to create more jobs for Australians. And that is what we are now seeing. We now have around 130,000 more Australians in work than we did prior to when COVID-19 hit Australia. That is again showing that the Morrison government's economic policy is working. We also know that the recovery plan that we're putting in place, it is putting confidence into Australians who are putting up their hands and saying, I'm ready, willing and able to work. And what we saw again in the month of May was that the participation rate actually increased by 0.3 points to 66.2%. So what we're now seeing is unemployment is now down to the lowest level since 2014. Again, there's still more work to do, but certainly the policies that we are putting in place are having a positive effect on the economy.
Senator Rennick, a supplementary question.
How is the government's economic plan, including lower taxes, helping support Australia's economic recovery from COVID?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, when it comes to lower taxes, that is just in the DNA on those on the coalition side of government. Because if you recall at the last election, colleagues, $387 billion in taxes was promised to the Australian people by the Labor Party. $387 billion in additional taxes was a promise made by the Labor Party to the Australian people at the last election. And all I can say is, thank goodness the Australian people put their trust and their faith in the coalition government, because you see, then COVID-19 hit. Can you honestly imagine, colleagues, if those opposite had been elected to office and had then imposed an additional $387 billion in taxes on the Australian people? It would have absolutely crippled businesses across Australia, crippled small and family businesses in particular, and then they would have been hit with the COVID-19 pandemic. Lowering taxes, whether it's for business or for Australians, it's in our DNA.
Cash. Senator Rennick, a final supplementary question.
Sorry. How has the government's skilling and jobs agenda helped Australians by supporting job creation to deliver economic opportunity?
Senator Cash.
Well, Mr President, the Morrison government, we are all about opportunity for Australians, and again that is reflected in the employment figures for the month of May, where we saw employment absolutely exceed the creation of market expectations. But of course, in vocational education and training, in the skills part of the portfolio, we've provided an additional $2.7 billion to extend the boosting apprenticeship commencements. What we want to see is another 170,000 new apprentices and trainees brought on board to Australian businesses. We have extended that policy through now until March 2022. That's because we understand businesses out there, they do need our assistance, and this is a way of assisting them to bring a new apprentice, a new trainee on into their business. And encouragingly, we've actually seen, since we first announced this policy, it's now 157,700 new apprentices, colleagues, have been brought on. New apprentices, 157,700 have been brought on.
Senator Birmingham.
Mr President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Senator Colbeck.